So this is Susan Sage, and she's the manager of the Public Goods Initiative here, and she's also in charge of doing a lot of the scanning and finding materials that will eventually result in displays, exhibitions, and presentations.
One of our hidden treasures. You can see right here, the schoolhouse we are in. And way over there is the outhouse. And that hangs right here for everybody to see. And it's very special. And
Is there a reason the outhouse is so far away?
Yes, there was. Well, I just have to say, if anything can explain public goods, it's the sewer system.
Yeah.
Funded by all, used often by all, and ignored by all. So that about does it. Before we jump into how the sewer system works, I'd like us to take a step back and imagine what life would be like without the sewer system. What if you woke up tomorrow morning, every toilet, every drain connected to the sewer disappeared? Not a pretty thought, is it? No showers, no washing machine, no kitchen sink.
You're flushing toilets.
That was the first one, yeah. No toilets. Well, the early Encinitas residents didn't have to imagine that. They lived it every day. It was the norm. And I'm going to paint a little picture for you of what that was like. This here is a shot of Mission Bay. I don't know if you can all see that okay. And I apologize, I should know this. Hello, I'm afraid to tell you, I don't know the date of it. But it is a time when it was okay to run a pipe into the bay and just spew muck out there. And it was in a public place where children played. Families went to the beach there, and they were exposed to all of that. At that point, there were no treatment centers. There were no regulations at the time. That was the norm. Ah, the outhouse. And again, those early Encinitas residents thought this was the height of sanitation technology. And it was, considering the alternative, it really was. And I just have to say that I have enjoyed my time here tremendously, working with Hillel and Carolyn and all the volunteers, and just uncovering all of these hidden treasures. And one of my favorite things to do was editing the oral transcriptions that Hillel had talked about. And we have this coming in. Welcome. So, I love those oral. We have over 100 of them. And I've done maybe a dozen, right? There's plenty to go, but they're so much fun to listen to. And I came across one from Robert Grice. Robert Grice happens to be the great-grandson of Edward and Jane Hammond, who are the people that built this schoolhouse the year they moved here from England in 1883.
Wow.
Small world. So that is Edward Grice.
Is that, what's that name, Grice or Bryce?
Grice, G-R-I-C-E.
Prominent family in the community.
Yes, yes. And I came across this interview that was taken 30 years ago. And Robert was about 70 at the time. And he is talking about growing up in Sunset Ranch, which is right now where the golf course is on Lucadia, just north of Quail Gardens, that area. A long time ago, we're talking 1920s, 30s, 1920 and 30s, and he was about, I don't know, 7. He's reminiscing when he was about 7 to 10 years old. So, I just want to make sure we have it loud enough for you to hear, but it's a 2-minute clip if you want to take a listen.
And of course, each bedroom had their own bedroom under the bed because there was no indoor plumbing of any kind, and the outhouse was about, like I said, 50 feet at least from the house. And so during the night, downstairs and traipsing out through the yard to go to the outhouse and use the old thunderbolt.
Whose job was it to empty those, or do you?
Oh, I know, that was our job too. Yeah.
And what grew around the outhouse?
Oh yeah, well the outhouse, in order to screen that, it was a two-holder outhouse, and to screen the door along it, there was an arbor around it with plumbago on it, which is a sticky purple flower that usually stuck to your clothes when you walked under it or by it. You can always tell when somebody had been to the outhouse because they have the plumbago flowers sticking to their hair. And that was one of the spooky things to me. Was always going to, boy, I'd wait as long as I could before I went to the outhouse because there are always so many spiders and stuff around. I'd always be nervous. I'd lift up the lid thing and check about the spiders before I sat down. And then, of course, the only thing they had for toilet paper were old catalogs.
Yes, here's that.
Sears Woodlawn.
And the slip pages were always the last
Oh,
one.
the last ones to be used. And they used corn cobs too.
They did use it. When we didn't use corn.
Yeah. But I almost use the shiny slip pages of the Sears catalog first.
Oh, it gives you a whole new appreciation for Charmin, huh?
I have one question. Is that a one-holer or a two-holer?
It's a two-hole. He said it was a two-hole.
His was a 2. Yeah. I know, it was amazing,
So that's one of the treasures we have in our schoolhouse here.
yeah. Finding those.
Now, our outhouse at the ranch in Arizona, which we're selling anyway, we always had, there was a thing of lye that you had to sprinkle over it every time
Yeah.
you used
Break it
it.
down.
That's
We didn't mention that, I don't know if they used that.
And look what I have here,
Oh,
plumbago.
Oh.
that's
And I'm 90% sure these are direct descendants of that plant because it's prevalent everywhere, you know. And if, I'm going to pass this around, and if you feel here, you'll know the stickiness, and it just sticks. It literally just sticks wherever it goes. So, what is it called? Plumbago.
the garden club people, you
That
know
was
that?
fun.
That's fun.
For those that could afford it, they would hire what they called the night soilmen, who would use a contraption like this here excavator to regularly pump their cesspools or their septic tanks. But most people just couldn't afford that and would dump it into the ground or into a body of water. And the result of that is, well, questionable water sources, flies, mosquitoes, and the smell. Ooh, you can
Disease and
imagine.
pestilence.
You know, yeah, I had disease in there, but Hillel reminded me that we have not uncovered any disease-related, well, deaths, I guess, because of this particular sanitary issue. But I know it was prevalent, you know, everywhere before it started.
Good. I think too, we had people had the resilience. What do we call it? We had the immunity, right? Our immune system was used to a lot more bacteria than we are now.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and I've been to other countries, and I'm sure they have more, or they'd be dead, all of them.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, we
Some of
couldn't
the
just go
places
back to it now.
I would love to have an interview with bacteria, but I don't think we're going to.
Oh. Well, I know some of you might have been part of the transition, so I didn't know if anybody had a story from a parent or a grandparent about, oh, Karen
have a
has
story. My mother had my little brother in 1957, and that's when they were putting in the sewer system on our street, which is up here in the Highlands. And she didn't want to have a child at age 42, but she did, so she was always cranky. Anyway, here she was, with a big belly, and they're working on putting the sewer system in, and there were these signs that said "minute work." backyard. And she just, that was just too much for her. Because she was pregnant and it said men at work.
Yeah.
She wouldn't let that one go.
As in men do bad work? Okay. All right.
She was
Interesting
pregnant.
Charles
Very
story.
pregnant.
The
Yeah.
early days of Encinitas back in the 60s.
Right.
Listen up.
60 years ago, when I moved here back in 62, we had it's not a sewer system, but we had a public dump out on El Camino Real, and it was a trash burning dump before we realized the impact on air. Well, it was allowed back in those days, and I know I had one in my backyard. We had a 55-gallon drum. We would burn the trash in our backyard and stink up the neighborhood and put a smoke in the neighborhood. That was before we realized and placed new public goods in public dumps for us to have quality air and get rid of our trash. That's Encinitas.
I have a story.
Same thing.
Susie has a story.
We have a few here.
My
Sure.
I was lucky to have grandparents that one of them lived on 4th Street, 744, bought the house the year I was born,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other one on 3rd Street. But in the 4th Street address, there was an incinerator, they called it, and it was time to light it, everything. Sometimes you wondered about sparks or something like that, but they regularly used it. And
Yeah, I lived on Fifth just a half a block
to
from
burn
4th Street.
trash.
Thank you.
I lived right there in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I just lived just north of Moonlight Beach here, and the house I bought in the 70s was the first house on the block, and it just these little shacks, but there was an incinerator, because when we remodeled, we found all this glass, little bottles, and it, it was a little shack. It wasn't a large property, but it was far enough away to have the incinerator, just like yours. So it was all over.
Thank you. We have a couple more? Yeah.
Those of you who, like me, went to camp when we were children. I went to Girl Scout camp, which I loved, and we had the John. And the John, of course, was an outhouse. And I had much experience with the John.
Why wasn't it called a Jane?
We have another one, little story here.
Oh, I was raised in Los Angeles, so the 40s and 50s. All my parents were raised there. They all grew up with flush toilets and incinerators in the backyard.
That's what we had.
And by the time I was living there in the 40s and 50s, the city was trying to control the results of all these incinerators going on. So certain areas burned on certain days. And my mother could only do the incinerator. But we also had a garbage pan that was like food left over from your kitchen. It just sat out there. And they hadn't thought of that yet, isn't that strange? Yeah, and then a truck went by picking up these horrible things, and then my mother would go out and wash it. But,
Sounds interesting.
yeah, it was- and I met a friend many years later whose father went bankrupt because the city suddenly banned incinerators, and that was what their company was building incinerators, which were concrete pieces that kind of fit together. And so his father went bankrupt because they stopped using it. That's what you call not looking ahead. Something for your business prospects.
Well, it seems incinerators is a common theme, so maybe something next to explore. Yeah, how that happened. Well, what we just heard, these stories and experiences and memories, they represent one of the most dramatic quality of life transformations this community has seen in history. It's quite incredible. And we're reaping the benefits. I can tell you right now. I'm going to talk a little bit about how Encinitas evolved from what we just talked about into the municipal marvel that we have today. When June and I decided, out of all the public goods, which one did we choose to do, for some reason we chose the sewer systems. And I'm like, it should be easy.
No.
It wasn't. How can it not be easy? Encinitas is a small, sweet, little, perfect town. And come to find out, we have 4 separate sewer systems. And this map was pretty useful in the beginning. We have Leucadia, wastewater district. We've got Encinitas, and then we have Cardiff, which serves Olevenheim. Olevenheim has a wastewater, but that serves another separate community. So I'm like, okay, all right, we have this to work with. Who came first? Who's on first? Who's on second? All right, so a timeline. In the beginning, in order to have a sewer system, you need water. So, in 1910, Frank Cullen and his wife Esther moved here from England, and Frank was a developer. He built a school, Cullen School. He built a hotel. He built the train station that we have. And he built a water tower in 1911. Yes, Karen?
And he excavated Glen Park.
And he excavated Glen Park. See the things
Where
we
Glen
learned?
Park came from.
Ah, got it. So what he did, he figured, well, we need water. We need water. So he built a tank on the highest part of mountain in Cardiff, up there, and he pumped water from Cottonwood Creek 3 miles away through a 2.5-inch pipe. Needless to say, it was pretty spotty. Didn't quite work as well, but people got used to it, right? And they're like, okay, you know, some of the restaurants were like, oh, it's unreliable, but it's great when it happens. So he started things. He started to get the wheels churned. I have a little side note about him because I found this awesome map here in this historical society of Cullen naming the streets in Cardiff before they're named now. And the names are all Spanish names here because that's what they were doing up and down the coast. Santa Rosa, San Jose, you know, all the Spanish names. So he put together this map, and you could see Manchester would have been Primavera. You know, Liverpool would have been Sereno. There's all these Spanish names, but his wife Esther, who was from Cardiff, Wales, said, well, honey, wouldn't it be nice if we named the town Cardiff? And we gave it English names, Liverpool, Manchester, Oxford, and she won out. She won. So,
As it should be.
that was really cool. I thought, in fact, I have that map here. If you want to take a look at it, and see all the names that didn't happen.
Are those individual lots?
Yes, and even way back then. This is
I know.
That's a lot of work, drawing like that. That's
circa, yeah, I don't know, but that's
Very
how
well
they're all
done.
packed in there. So he was a developer
Oh.
for sure. But there's Glen Park, so that'll give you. Here's Vulcan, San Diego. That's San Diego. So fun little fact. Okay, then what happened next? Well, we already talked about what happened to the water, right? It was collected and discharged places, just away from us. Probably not a good spot. But I think people got to thinking, well, if we can pipe water in, we should be able to pipe it out, right? And other towns have been doing this, and San Diego had already had their sewer system, and we're coming along. But in 1948, Encinitas had applied to the county of San Diego, because that was their boss at the time, for a permit to be able to build a sewer system. And they were granted that permit. Yes.
We were an unincorporated town at that time.
Exactly. That's why that Cardiff sewer division, it was. They were divisions, not district at the time. There was a Cardiff and an Encinitas one. And they reported to the county of San Diego. And San Diego's like, sure, have at it, go ahead. So, like within a week or two, there was already people saying, no, that we don't want that. That's not good, we don't need it. Come on in. Throw a chair.
You're late.
So somebody wanted it disbanded right off the bat. That didn't happen. A year goes by, a vote goes, it wasn't voted in. Another year goes by, another vote. Again, it didn't pass by the people. They were skeptical about it for whatever reason. Some people thought, having a sewer system would smell up things or devalue their homes. So there was some resistance there. And then finally, it gets passed. Woo-hoo! It took a while. But then the county planning commission didn't want the plans to go through, so they said no, no, no. And then a supervisor took action that June said, right? Collective conflict had to resolve in collective choice. So he made the decision, I'm sorry, you all don't want it, but we're going through with it anyway. And that's how it happened. So it took 4 years.
That was the democratically elected, that was an elected official that did that.
Yes, yes. Yeah, it wasn't just Joe.
Yeah, elected official.
Joe on the corner there. And Mr. Robert Rice, who happened to be the secretary of the Cardiff Sanitary Division at that time, said within a year, 2/3 of the homes were already connected to the sewer system. So it was a hit once it eventually got going.
Flushing toilets.
Yeah.
Hey, Susan, I have a question. Was that voluntary or was that because it wasn't available everywhere, you know? You know what I mean? Did those who didn't get it, was it that they couldn't or they didn't want to, you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe they were just down on the list yet to
Yeah.
come, or
Okay.
geographically where the pipes were
Sure.
going. So then Leucadia, as June had mentioned, in 1959, the Leucadia Water District was voted into existence, which later became the Leucadia Wastewater District. And we've got the Articles of Incorporation here, and that vote was 302 to 56.
This is an initiative or referendum.
Yep, yep. So that was Acadia. And then Olivenheim, same thing, same year, same, huge difference, 102 to 12. So things were moving along. And then, somewhere around 1965, the San Alejo Water Pollution Control Facility was built. At the same time, there was another facility built, and that is the Encina treatment plant up in Carlsbad. So when this happened, that's when Encinitas and Cardiff ended up sending their water to this treatment plant, which is where Mike runs. He heads that up there. That's right on Manchester, across from the lagoon. I think they want to call it the water campus.
The first primary plant in Encinitas was built in 1960, right there where Cottonwood Park is.
Yeah.
And I know this because my brother reminded me that my dad's company built it, and Mark Snyder became the first general manager of that facility back in the early 60s.
Yep, great. And then after a while, it did kind of
It went out of the way because the collective power of the Encina facility changed all that. And I was actually there with my brother building the foundation of the first secondary treatment plant, digester, back in the 70s.
Excellent, thank you.
So we are well connected to the sewer system.
My dad said he used to work in a sewer.
In the George Pipe.
Yes, talk about the fact that there's a whole area of Leucadia where people are not hooked up to the sewers.
I think that's a good question for Mike when he comes up. Yeah, I did come across that.
My eldest son's Boy Scout group got to tour that facility on Manchester. It's something you should all do once. Because I still have visions of how they process this stuff.
Thank you. Yes.
I just wanted to say that there was a period of time in the mid-'80s when I used to buy gold jewelry from one of the workers that worked at the sewage treatment plant, because people would lose rings in the sink. And eventually, over time, they would make their way to a filter. And he had a bag of stuff. And I would buy the scrap gold from him and make it into new jewelry.
Piles of jewelry.
There's golden nuggets.
But it was really nasty though, because I bought an 18-karat ring from him, that diamond ring that was completely black from the contents of the sewer, and I ended up selling it to the veterinarian there in Cardiff after I cleaned it up.
Wow.
Good to know.
Don't tell his wife.
Go ahead.
On the East Coast in Pennsylvania, is this a time frame that you're showing us that happened nationally? Or was this
No,
later?
this is just us. This is Encinitas.
But
Yeah.
I think
That's a really good
Yes.
question. We're only looking at the history here, but
I'll
I
answer
suspect,
that.
Okay.
I suspect that it was all happening, around the same time around the country, but we didn't look for that, so it's a really good question.
I can answer that. My grandparents, who bought their house in around the turn of the 1900s, they already had, my mother and father grew up with flush toilets in the house.
Well, my aunt had, and lived a mile away from us, we had flush toilets when I was young. But she had a pump, she had running water, and she had an outhouse, which I was fascinated with as a child.
Thank you. So what happened here was the original treatment plant at Cottonwood Creek, needed to go. People didn't like it, it got smelly. So Encinitas and Cardiff went south, and Leucadia joined the Encina a little bit later than that. And then the city of Encinitas was incorporated in 1986, and then that's when all of these came under the city of Encinitas. And that's not to say things stopped there, that's just where I stopped.
Yeah.
That's a good point there.
Are there still sections of it that are not hooked up to those systems? Because
Yep.
when we went to repave try to get our alley repaved, or paved because it was dirt, it's the one right here on Third, between Third and Fourth. And we found out that it was still unincorporated part of, and there's other alleys and I don't know, other public infrastructure that might not be covered by the city. The city said they wouldn't pay for it to be paved. So we had to collectively get the neighbors to agree to get it to be paved.
Wow.
But the city's taking over, I guess, responsibility for maintaining.
Okay.
When we became a city, the city took control and responsibility for the streets, but they did not take control and responsibility for the alleyways, because none of those were paved, or, they were all whatever you did in the back of your house. And one by one, they went through downtown and accepted responsibility for them.
Yeah, because I believe the one, the alley that connects to the north bus, just shy of Moonlight, is actually being cared for and by the city. Yeah, right.
It's just considered a private road until the city accepts responsibility. And they had 20 years to do that. And if they didn't accept responsibility for what was considered a private road, the people who lived there could apply to make it a private road, and that's why you can't drive through. Got it? It's like the east side of the freeway. That's why you can't get from one place to another without going down. It's all those past streets are closed.
Okay, well, what we're looking at here is a 40-year transformation from individual households managing their waste, often quite poorly, to a coordinated regional system that protects public health and the environment, making our lives that much better while remaining completely invisible to daily life. That was my only cheat sheet. I just almost done.
Impressive.
So how does it work today? Well, I found this little gem here from an aspiring artist, a 9-year-old girl had submitted her water. I know, very impressive. But that's about my level of understanding about when you take a shower, it goes down the drain. And then it goes somewhere, and it gets cleaned, and then it goes out. Right? That's how it works. That must be how it works. But as it turns out, it's a little bit more complex than that. And that's why we have our guest today. Allow me to introduce Mike Thornton, who is the general manager for the past 23 plus years at the San Alejo Water Campus, to educate us a little bit how it works and what your system is doing.